The guest here tonight is one of the great stars of Hollywood and the only woman that tamed lions, tigers, and Alfred Hitchcock, the one and only Miss Tippi Hedren. Your book is fantastic, and I'm not just saying that because we're here together. And one of the first things that I learned is that your name Tippi was not the invention of some Hollywood casting director or Alfred Hitchcock. It was from your dad.
My daddy, yes.
Talk a little bit about your dad and growing up in Lafayette, Minnesota.
Yeah, my baptismal name is I can't even say it. Nathalie K. Hedren. And my daddy said, that's too much for this little tiny baby. So he started calling me Tupsa, which is apparently a Swedish term of endearment for little girl, whatever. And then it went from Tupsa to Tips to Tippi. And that stayed with me, yeah.
And here we are.
And here we are.
All right. Now, your affinity, your love for animals of all kinds, but particularly cats, this started at a young age.
Actually, I love them all.
Mm-hmm.
No matter where they live or whatever, I find them to be infinitely fascinating. And that started out as, I don't even remember when it started. I was so little.
It's always been part of the DNA. Yeah. Now, you started out modeling, went to New York. Was there any notion of an acting career at that time? Or
Never?
Never. There was no idea of like a crossover, and then you got married. Melanie,
yes.
The one and only Melanie Griffith, made
That's
her
right.
appearance in your life.
Yes.
And you went to New York, and there was, when you ended up in LA, I believe there was a commercial you did for Sago Milk. Seago, thank you.
Yeah,
and
right
well,
accent.
pick it up from there after you did that commercial and the phone rang, and what happened from there?
Well, I was modeling, and I was a model with Eileen Ford. I don't know if you knew of her, in New York. I started in Minneapolis and then my parents moved to California, and I modeled in California, and then New York was going, yoo-hoo! And so I opened that door and walked through it, and lived in New York for 11 years and was modeling, and that's a pretty little room. So I was modeling in New York, and after 10 years, that's a long time to be a model, and I was still successful, which was awesome.
Right.
And then the following year, things started to wane, and I thought, oh, what am I going to do now? I've got my little daughter, Melanie, to support, and I don't type. So I'm really wondering, what am I going to do? And so I said, let's all move back to California. And we packed up our little dog and the cat and the bunny and everybody, and we all moved back to California. And I saw a few agents and a few things, and things weren't going well. I mean, I was really getting a little bit frightened because, of course, I had to go and rent an expensive home in Brentwood, and
Naturally.
we can't just get used to a certain way of living.
Of course.
So anyway, there I was, and I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? And I received a phone call asking if I was the girl in the Seago commercial. And I said, yes, why? And they said, well, there's somebody who's interested in you. And I said, oh, who? And he said, well, come over to MCA. MCA was a big agency.
Right.
Huge agency.
They own Universal.
Yes. And so I went over to meet them, and they were perfectly charming. There were about 3 people in the room, and we talked, and all just had a wonderful time. And I thought, why am I here?
It was all very vague.
Yes, it was very vague. And then they handed me a piece of paper, and they said, this is a contract. We're all going to leave the room, and we want you to read the contract, understand it, and if you are willing to go ahead with this, sign it. And so I did. And I thought, phew, saved.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, aside from looking at the dollar signs on
Yeah.
it, which, you know, we all look at that first, were you still, it was still who you were signing the contract
Yes.
with, you were still in the
Yes,
dark
and
about
so
that?
after I read it, I opened the door and I said, yes, I've read it. And they said, do you agree with it? And I said, well, yes, but who is it for? And I said, since you've signed it, you agree with it, we'll go over and meet Alfred Hitchcock. And I picked the jaw off the floor.
Wow.
And he opened the door, and you know, I could hardly keep a straight face. This was when he was doing his weekly television show.
Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock
And remember,
Presents.
he opened the door,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly what he looked like, and I could hardly keep a straight face.
He didn't say, good evening.
No, he didn't. He should have, though. That was all it was missing.
Right, right.
So that's what we just sat and talked, and I was by then under contract to him.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened really fast, and I could really take a deep breath
Mhm.
again, you know, because my daughter would be okay and I'd be okay.
Right. Sure.
And so then I was asked to go to the studio and meet
Mhm.
everybody and all that, and I knew they were working on a movie called The Birds.
Mm-hmm.
And it never occurred to me, it went right over my head, that
Yeah,
I
so
would even be
you figured this
considered.
was going to be a contract for his television show or
Yes,
something.
At least
Yeah.
I wasn't an actress,
Yeah.
you know, so I had no ideas of glory or
Mhm.
anything like that. And so we met and we chatted, and then I was asked to come back to the studio every now and then, and they were working on, Bob Burks was working on, you know, the cinematographer. Everybody, I got to know everybody
Mhm.
and knew what they were doing, but it just went right over my head.
Were you at some point wondering, like, well, I'm getting these checks every week, I'm meeting all these people, what do you want me to
Well,
do, or did you just take it one day at a time?
I took it one day at a time, but
Right.
I also thought, well, they'll probably put me in the television show.
Sure.
You know, the weekly television shows,
Yeah.
because I wasn't an actress, and you know, I had no ideas of, you know,
No
anything
dreams of
like that.
grandeur or
I mean,
anything
no,
like that.
I
Right.
didn't have any expectations
Right.
like that.
So, talk a little bit about your screen test, because in reading about that, this was not the ordinary screen
No, it
test, it was
was-
extraordinary. Talk
It
about
was
that.
extraordinary, it's true. So anyway, I was given a couple of scenes to learn, and both Hitch, is what we who know him call him, Hitch and his wife Alma became my drama coaches
Mhm.
for this screen test that we were going to do. And you know, it was really wonderful. It was exciting.
I think a lot of people don't really understand the great influence that Alma had on his work and how brilliant she was in her own
And
right.
how brilliant it was of her to stay so far in the background.
Right.
It was never an overt kind of
Mhm.
thing where
Yeah.
it was really noticeable.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've been on the stage with Norman Lloyd where he's told the story of everyone looked at Psycho and they were ready to ship it, and then they screened it one more time, and then Alma saw Janet Leigh swallowing in the shower scene, and they said, you can't ship the picture. And so she was a real collaborator.
She was awesome,
Yeah.
wonderful woman.
So they basically were giving you a crash course on acting.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, right.
And they decided to do scenes from Rebecca, Catch a Thief, and one other.
Notorious?
Yeah.
Notorious.
That's the one. So anyway, it was a wonderful experience
Mhm.
working with Alma, and it was you know, he never really gave her a lot of credit for the work that she did for him
Mm-hmm.
with his movies, and how important she was with editing, and that's kind of sad because It was she who created, once all the filming had done, it was she who put it together.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's not unusual for most directors to kind of have the
Yeah,
ego enough to
somebody-
take all the credit. not an unusual
But he was
characteristic.
unusually good at it.
No doubt, no doubt. So, I want to save talking specifically about the birds when we wrap up, but what we can talk about, or what would be nice to talk about, is when did you find out and how did you find out that you got the part in the birds? Because that was that movie, Hitch's next movie, The Birds, that was the buzz all over Hollywood, was it not?
Yeah, it was great, and I usually wear the piece that I was given when this was announced to me, but it's in a museum in Beverly Hills right now.
Right.
With a dress that I wore when I got my star.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
You're
really
immortalized.
having fun. I'm really having a good time.
I'm telling you, I mean,
Yeah, I'm hot.
but you ended up, I believe, in a real legendary restaurant of the time, Chasen's.
Yes, Chasen's, which is unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, but
Yeah.
Chasen's, as I'm sure all of you know because you're movie lovers, one of the biggest, most popular restaurants in Beverly Hills for all of the big stars.
Right.
And I was invited to Chasen's to sit at Mr. Hitchcock's table, and Lou Wasserman came and sat with us.
That's a good
He's
sign.
sitting really heavy now.
Yeah, yeah.
Wasserman is there. I'm thinking, wow, what's going on
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
And a very beautifully wrapped package, a little box. And it was a red box with a little design on it from Gump's in San Francisco. And I opened the box, and it was a pin, a golden seed pearl pin of 3 birds in flight. And I looked at it, and I looked at Alma, and I looked at Hitch and Mr. Wasserman, and Mr. Hitchcock said, "We want you to play Melody Daniels in The Birds."
It didn't work that way for me when I got a call for a commercial once. What was it like in preparation to play this leading role?
Yeah, well, of course, my life just changed. And I was brought into the studio practically every day to work with Alma and Hitch as my directors for this screen test. And we did scenes from, I can't remember.
Yeah,
You remember.
Rebecca Notorious
Yes,
and
Catch a
Takes
Thief.
Catch a Thief.
Catch a Thief.
And I believe, didn't they fly in
Martin Balsam.
Marty Balsam?
Yes.
That's
there
pretty
were
impressive.
There were no Hollywood actors who could do that scene, those scenes with me. Not one.
Oh, he was a
So they
terrific
flew
actor.
in Martin Balsam to do it. I
So-
thought it was superfluous.
So this screen test probably cost as much as almost a short feature or something. I mean, it was an incredible amount of money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we did a wardrobe test. Edith had did the most beautiful wardrobe for me, from everyday clothes, pantsuits, afternoon, lunch and gown dresses, the most beautiful evening attire you could ever imagine. I was so spoiled. It was glorious.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever go home and look in the mirror, pinch yourself, going like, "Is this really happening?"
I did. Oh, yeah, I did.
Probably every evening or
Yeah,
something.
I did.
I've read some stuff about Hitchcock and the Birds and you, where the overview was that he kind of molded your performance as far as your expression, your nuance. When he directed you, was he full on and telling you exactly what he wanted, and how did that work?
Actually, that may have happened at the very beginning, with the screen test and
Sure.
all. But I picked up on it really
That's
fast,
Great.
and learned how to break down a script and how to pull a character together, and all the things that you have to learn to do that. And Alma was very, very helpful with all of it.
And your co-stars, Rod Taylor, Suzanne Plachette, Jessica Tandy, from your book and knowing what I know about those people, you couldn't have been in better hands with a cast like that. They were very supportive of you.
And they were supportive of me, and Jessica Tandy especially.
Yeah.
Not pushing anything, but just watching her was just very much. She was a very good teacher.
Oh, I can imagine.
Without even having teaching sessions or anything, just observing her.
Right. So when did it get to a point where you felt the relationship with Hitchcock was kind of changing a little bit from overseeing to managing to kind of like weirdness, I guess?
Yeah, well, this wasn't my first rodeo. I was 30 years old and had been in New York as a model. So I kind of saw it coming. But as I said, this wasn't my first rodeo, so
Sure.
I knew exactly how to handle it. And eventually, at the end of Marnie, I'd had enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I really had enough of it, and I said, I want to get out of the contract.
Right. Let's leapfrog a little bit over to Marnie, because that was a very, I hadn't seen it in many years, and great movie, great concept, great performance. I had Diane Baker out to my festival in Palm Springs, and she segued into Marnie and Hitchcock and all of this. But that was a really challenging role for you to play. I mean, that. How did you attack that? Did Hitchcock and Alma help you break down the character and really kind of get in its skin? And did the break with him really kind of affect in the end how he directed you in the movie?
Well, you got a lot of questions there.
I'm sorry. Take any one of them.
You got a big thing.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
What was the first?
Well, the first, how did you get inside the character in Marnie? That was difficult. Did Hitch and Alma?
Well, you know what I did? I talked to a number of psychologists and psychiatrists about this issue of a young child being really abused. Right. And how all those years ago people didn't even think of sort of talking to that child and working it out or whatever. It just wasn't done. And so I talked to about that issue. Sure. And how it later affects you. All those things.
Sure, you always carry it with you from childhood.
And it can just blow your world apart. When you get older and things start fun,
the memories come back.
Yes, and that can be very serious. And that is what happened to Marnie.
Right, exactly.
So I talked to a lot of doctors, and it was really interesting.
Yeah. I think one of the more challenging things about the role was trying to act frigid with Sean Connery. How did that work for you?
When Hitch was looking for the Sean Connery character, he went through all these different actors in LA and couldn't really find anybody or whatever. And I was thinking, well, what is he going to do? How is he going to do this, man? And finally, he called me into his office and he said, "I've found your Mark Rutland." And I said, "Great, who is it?" He said, "Sean Connery." And I said, "Sean Connery, huh? Okay, Mr. Hitchcock, I am playing this frigid woman who freaks out if a man even comes near her. How am I supposed to deal with that? And he said, it's called acting. And that was the end of that.
Oh, my God.